This video starts with a question: how do you build a railway without using steel rails? And the answer is with granite blocks. Located in the southwest corner of Devon, a quite remarkable example of 18th century initiative was shown by 3 generations of one family, the Templars. The story begins in 1722 with the birth of James Templar. At the age of 6, his father died, and he was sent to the Court School, an orphanage in Exeter. By the age of 25, he had formed a partnership with Thomas Parlby, who later became his brother-in-law. Parlby was a mason, and together they took on many small and medium-sized government contracts to construct and maintain shipyards and docks. He was only 30 years old when he and his partner won a large contract to extend the naval dockyard at Devonport. The contract made him a wealthy man, and he bought a country estate called Stover at a small village called Grace near Newton Abbot. He and his wife had 7 children, the first of which was also called James, and we'll follow his progress next. John Templar II moved in the very highest of government circles and held the post of Master of the Crown Office in London for 30 years. This was one of the highest offices of the time. John knew that other landowners in the area were beginning to mine china clay, but the main obstacle was its transport to the coast for export. He decided the only way to move large amounts of clay was by barge, so at his own expense in 1790 he constructed a canal from a basin at Ventiford towards the coast at Newton Abbot. It cost him £8,000, equivalent to £1 million today. The hamlet of Grace became the centre of the Templar organisation. From this aerial view we see what remains of the northern end of the canal. At the bottom left, the canal widens enough for a barge to be turned. The canal was in use by 1792. Freshly dug ball clay arrived on the right-hand side of the canal and was manually transferred into a waiting barge. Each barge was 56 feet long and could carry 20 tons. For almost 30 years, clay was the only product transported on the canal. Most of it was bought by Josiah Wedgwood in Staffordshire. In 1820, granite blocks from the Haytor quarry on the edge of Dartmoor were also transferred by barge. The granite was brought down from the quarry on an ingenious tramway known as the Granite Tramway. It terminated on the left-hand side of the canal, and the granite was transferred to a barge by means of the crane. The construction of the crane involved the minimum amount of expensive iron components. The wooden jib was fixed, but the entire crane could rotate through 360 degrees. This crane is an exact replica of the original. Inside is a vertical oak cylinder, at the top and bottom of which are metal pivots. And this is the original 1820 oak cylinder, with metal spindle at one end and a primitive toothed fixing which locked into a metal base ring. This is the metal base ring on the replica crane. In the Ventiford Basin and moving south, we see the canal has been drained. We soon reach the first set of locks. This is known as Grace Lock and is number 5 in the sequence of locks on the canal. All but one of the locks could accommodate 2 boats at a time. We can see the rotting remains of the wooden lock gates propped up at the side. Close to this lock was the former Great Western Railway line from Newton Abbot to Bolton Hampstead. It opened in 1866 and potentially became a major competitor to the Stover Canal. However, as the Templar family owned the canal, they had free transport for the items they transported. Moving down the canal we come to lock number 4, and it contained the graving dock. Only one other graving dock of this design existed in Britain, and that was on the Monmouthshire and Brecon Canal. The graving dock was built at the side of the lock, and a barge could be floated into it and then the lock emptied to allow work to proceed on the barge. This lock is a Grade 2 listed one. The graving berth has been very carefully restored. Also located here is the steam oven for heating and bending wood to the desired shape. Fortunately, the lower locks, number 1, 2 and 3, have all been lost to light industrial development. And at Newton Abbot Quay, we look upstream of the River Tyne. Many people think that the entrance to the Stover Canal is on the left of this view, but this is the mouth of the River Lemon. The Stover Canal entered about 200 yards beyond the bridge, at a location it's now impossible to access. The River Tyne flows on and becomes an increasingly wide estuary, and the barges had to be strong enough to cope with the prevailing conditions. And this is Teignmouth Harbour, although in the early 1800s no development existed, and it's believed that transshipment from the barge to the seagoing ships was done by direct transfer in the estuary. No doubt the bargemen would make use of the 4 old pubs for refreshment. These backed onto the beach, 2 of which still survive. This satellite image shows the white areas where ball clay has been mined. Fortunately, the area is surrounded by trees and is almost completely hidden from view. We return to an icy ventifold basin and begin the next event in its history. We turn to the 3rd generation of Templar entrepreneurs, and to George, the grandson of the dynasty founder. George had inherited the Templar estate in 1813 on the death of his father, James II. George clearly had the business initiative of both his father and grandfather, and he realised that one other natural resource could make him very wealthy. Granite was becoming in great demand for the building of railway bridges, viaducts and tunnels. A plentiful supply of granite existed in Dartmoor. It was just a question of somehow getting it to market. There were already several small quarries on Haytor, and George decided a tramway could link the quarries to the canal. Iron for making rails was still very expensive in 1820, when George set about building a tramway. He decided to use granite slabs with a reverse L shape cut into the granite, 4 foot 3 apart, to guide the flangeless wagon wheels. Maximum gradient on the tramway was 1 in 40, and the wagons were pulled by teams of horses. The actual wagons used to transport the granite were much larger than this one. They were about 13 feet long and were coupled together in trains of up to 12 wagons. They were hauled by teams of 18 horses walking in single file. On the downward loaded journey, the horses were coupled to the rear of the wagons and were used to brake the descent. Today, Haytor is part of the Dartmoor National Park and is visited by many walkers and tourists. Most of the visitors will miss the quarries as they become overgrown and flooded. Some remains of the original equipment can still be seen. Standing at the entrance to the quarry, the route of the tramway can be easily picked out by the green line cutting through the vegetation. Haytor stands on the skyline, and in front of it can be seen the waste overburden removed by the quarrymen in order to get to the good granite. There are some lengthy stretches of granite track, including some very well constructed points. Wagons were forced to take a particular route by a wooden wedge placed in the frog cut into the throat of the point. This view clearly shows the cutaway section of granite on which the flangeless wagon wheel ran. There were 5 quarries in total, 3 of which were small. All were linked to the tramway. This is the main junction on the tramway. On the right is the line to the main quarry, Haytor, and on the left is the branch line leading to the 4 other quarries. The tramway began carrying granite in 1820, but by 1858 had fallen into disuse as the cost of removing the granite by the tramway was too expensive. About 100 men worked in the quarry and on the tramway. During the working week they slept in a bunkhouse in the village of Haytor. It's now the village pub. It's not known how George Templar decided on using granite rails for his tramway. There were several other similar examples in Britain, but they all post-date the beginning of construction of the Haytor tramway. George Templar appeared to lose interest in the tramway and left the running of the quarry and tramway to his legal representative.